Earlier, we added this config.json to store our configuration parameters. That was a quick and simple solution. It worked well. However, the parameters that we set here are not environment specific. Every application goes through multiple environments: development, test, and production. Sometimes we want the value of these parameters to be different across different environments. For example, on our development machine, we want to use our development backend, but when we deploy this application to a production environment, we want to use a real production backend with real data. So this config.json is not going to help us with that. However, the applications that we generate with Create React App have built-in support for environment-specific variables. Let me show you how to work with them. So close this. Here in the root of the project, we add a new file with extension .env. Note that this file doesn't have a name, it's just an extension. In this environment file, we can store all our environment variables with their default values. We can also have environment-specific files. So here we add a new file, .env.development. We could also have .test and .production. So here in this file, we'll store all our development environment variables. All these variables have a key and a value. The key should start with React _app _. If you don't use this prefix, what I'm going to show you is not going to work. So let's set a couple of variables here. The first one is name. We set this to vidly in dev. We can also set version. Now to read these, let's go to one of our JavaScript files. For simplicity, I'm going to go to index.js. But what I'm going to show you, you can do that in any JavaScript files. So here, let's do a console.log of process.env. If you have worked with Node before, you have seen this object. So process represents the current process, and env is a property of this object that represents all the environment variables. These environment variables can be set directly in terminal, or they can come from these configuration files. Now back to index.js, save the changes. Here in the terminal, we need to restart our application because at the time we launched this application, we didn't have these environment files. And anytime we make any changes in these files, we have to restart our application because they are not watched. So stop the server and launch it again. All right, here in the console, look at our process.env object. So we have a couple of built-in environment variables, node env, which is set to development, and this will change automatically to production when you build a production-ready package. We'll get to that shortly. You also have public URL, and here are the two environment variables that we define, app name and version. Now back in index.js, in order to get the application name, we should get this property of the environment object, React app name. Now here I'm going to add a label, and you will see that why in a second. Let's call this Superman. You'll see why in a second. So here in the console, you can see our application name. But what is this Superman here for? Well, let's go to the sources tab. Here on the left side, you can see our domain. Let's expand the static folder under JS, open up bundle.js. So this is the main bundle that includes all our JavaScript code. Here we want to search for Superman. So press Command and F on Mac or Control F on Windows and search for Superman. Here is our console.log statement. But look at the second argument we pass to the log method. It's not process.env.react app name. It's the actual value of that environment variable. So the expressions that reference an environment variable are replaced by the actual value of that environment variable during build time. So here in the terminal, when we run npm start, that's when the build process happens. All the environment variables that we stored directly in the shell or in our configuration files are extracted, and then wherever we have process.env.something, that expression is replaced with an actual value. In the next lecture, we'll look at building for production.